Welcome to the history of the Constitution of the United States. 1777, the first plan for a government in the United States, was called the Articles of Confederation. It did not refer to the states as nations, but as a firm league of friendship. The document set up a weak federal government and strong state governments. Each state created its own constitution and printed its own money. Problems arose. The biggest problem with the Articles of Confederation was the fact that the federal government had no right to tax the people. Why do you think this was such a problem? After the war ended, the United States began to experience great money problems. Soldiers who had fought during the war could not be paid, and they went home poor and tired. The country also now had a great amount of war debt, $76 million. Leaders did not know how they would raise the money to pay off these debts. In 1786, a rebellion took place that would convince many that a stronger federal government was needed. This was called Shays' Rebellion. About 1,000 soldiers marched from Springfield to Boston. The U.S. Army met them there, and gunfire was exchanged. A stronger federal government was needed. In 1787, 55 men met in Philadelphia at what would later be called the Constitutional Convention. Their original goal was to change the Articles of Confederation to give the federal government more control. During the convention, there were many debates as they worked to figure out how to revise the Articles of Confederation. The debates. They debated over how the states would be represented in Congress. The same number of representatives for each state, or would the states be represented based on population? They also debated over whether or not slaves would be counted in the population to gain representatives. So the solution, they came up with a compromise. For representation, they created two houses of Congress. The House of Representatives represents the states based on population, and the Senate represents states equally. For slavery, they decided that Congress would not be allowed to make any changes to control slavery for 20 years. They also agreed to count 3/5 of the slave population. This means that 3 out of every 5 slaves would count towards a state's population for representation in Congress. So let's stop and think. If a state had 300 slaves, how many people would that represent for their state? They developed a system of checks and balances in the Constitution. They created a system with 3 branches of government. Each power given to one branch of government would be matched by equal power being given to the other 2 branches of government. Can you name the 3 branches of the federal government? September 17, 1787, 39 delegates signed the Constitution and sent it out to the states for a vote. People everywhere then began to debate about whether or not they thought the Constitution was a good plan for the country. But finally, on June 21, 1788, the Constitution was established due to the ratification by the 9th state. 9 out of the 13 states had to ratify or approve the Constitution for it to become official. The order of the ratification: first was Delaware, then Pennsylvania, 3rd, New Jersey, 4th, Georgia, 5th, Connecticut, 6th, Massachusetts, 7th, Maryland, 8th, South Carolina, and 9th was New Hampshire. That's it. Now you know everything there is to know about the Constitution. So are you ready for your pop quiz? Just kidding. There's so much more to learn about the Constitution. So let's go ahead and get back to class and check it all out.
Created using PowToon.